This is the Collector Car Podcast, the home for the auto enthusiast. Join Greg Stanley as he applies over 25 years of insights and analytical experience to the collector car market. He will interview the experts and throw in some fun stuff as well.
Hey, it's Greg Stanley. If you're listening to this podcast, you know I love everything automotive. This passion has expanded to include being a car specialist consultant for RM Sotheby's. So if you need assistance buying or consigning a collector car at any one of our online or live auctions, including Scottsdale, Amelia Island, or Monterey, you can reach one of our car specialists at rmsotheby's.com, or you can email me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. Metron Garage is a company designing unique garages, condos, and other structures specifically for the auto enthusiast. They've got 8 models to choose from, including 2-story options, which I think is super cool, all with a very modern look and feel to them. And they come in all sizes, and they're fully customizable. You can check out them today and start speccing your own ultimate garage at metrongarage.com, where you can request a catalog or talk to someone to learn more. So be sure to check it out. I just want to give a quick thanks to Euro Classics for sponsoring this episode. Euro Classics is all about collector cars, from servicing your new BMW M5 to prepping your Porsche for the racetrack to executing a total restoration on your favorite classic. They do it all from routine maintenance to performance upgrades to appraisals and everything in between. You can learn more about its owner, Dale Oaks, by listening to episode number 65 of this podcast. And you can find Euro Classics in the Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana service area and online at euroclassics.com. Classics, CLASSIX.com. Hey, it's Greg Stanley, and welcome again to the Collector Car Podcast. This is a little bit of a different episode, but I think everybody will really enjoy it because it's ways that you can upgrade your ride and make it enjoyable for every day that you use it. So to help us talk about this, I'd like to welcome Ted Cardenas. Ted, how you doing today?
Great, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And now if you would, I appreciate you being on the show. If you would, could you give us an overview of kind of what you're doing at Pioneer Electronics? I know that you're the Vice President of Marketing for Car Electronics, and you sent me some cool stuff I've been able to play around with for a little bit for my older Porsche, but I know you're doing a lot of fun stuff over there. Can you kind of give our listeners an overview?
Yeah, sure. So Pioneer Electronics, we're here in North America. We're the sales and marketing subsidiary of Pioneer Corporation, who hopefully most of you and your listeners have heard of. We're an 80-plus-year-old brand. We've evolved from home electronics to really being the world's leader in car electronics over the last 3 or 4 decades. Our business is both on the OEM side, where we'll build a lot of the products, whether it's the radios or the speakers or the amplifiers or things in a lot of the new cars that are available for sale today, inventory withstanding. But really where my role is primarily is in the aftermarket side. And just as you mentioned, Greg, we make a variety of different products that can help a consumer. The tagline we've been using for several years that is near and dear to our heart is don't break up with your car, upgrade it. Because the average age of a vehicle here in the United States on the road today is about 12 years old. We're all facing, whether it's new car shortages, used car shortages, or like us as car enthusiasts, we just love our cars. But as technology evolves, whether it's your new smartphone or it's, you really want to improve the way the music sounds when you drive, because, listening to music as you drive is such an integral part of the experience. Pioneer is there with products that can bring in the latest technology like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, even Amazon's Alexa. We can, upgrade the sound so that the music sounds better. We can add in Bluetooth, so it's easier, more convenient, and safer to talk on the phone while you drive. And even do things, some of our latest products that we've just launched are wireless charging devices, so that a lot of states here in the United States have enacted laws that make it illegal to hold the phone while you drive. So we have a range of products that can hold it's a cradle for the phone, but it also charges some of the newest smartphone devices that have wireless charging, so you no longer have to have cords and wires in your car just to charge that phone. So, really that's the heart of my role at the company, and what we do is, again, really making technology available for the car that you already love.
Yeah, that's a really great tagline. I really love that. And what's so interesting is obviously I'm steeped in collector cars all the time, anywhere from, the 1900s to, to collector cars that came out last year, like the McLaren Speedtail. And I know that a lot of times when you see these cars, especially if they're over 10 or 12 years old and they're maybe 20, 30, 40 years old, either they have the original radio, which is nowhere near satisfying to listen to, or they have like a period upgrade or an upgrade from 20 years later that is still pretty horrible, So I love what you're doing. One of the biggest trends we're seeing right now in the collector car marketplace is upgrading folks, right? It's everything from, upgrading to an LS3 Corvette engine to upgrading the sound system to upgrading the brakes. I mean, it's people want old cars that give them the comfort, convenience, pleasure, entertainment, everything that their new cars do. So I think it's really timely that we're having this conversation. And my listeners know I have either it's considered the newest old Porsche or the oldest new Porsche. It's the 99 Porsche 911. So it's the first of the water-cooled, just 1 year after the last of the air-cooled. People either love them or hate them. I love mine. And you were kind enough to send some cool stuff to test out. And I will have to say, I am not an expert car person. Like, I tinker on my cars. I can change the spark plugs, the coil, but I'm not rebuilding an engine. I did have a buddy kind of look over my shoulder here a little bit, but you were very clear when you sent this stuff to me that, hey, this is stuff that folks can they can put in over a weekend in their garage. I'll have all the YouTube links for my particular one on this description. But there's a lot of ways, like you said, you can upgrade what you have in the garage now by having a fun weekend with a buddy. And I must say, like, you were fortunate to give me Apple CarPlay. I absolutely love that. I love the integration. I love the subwoofer. I love being hands-free while I'm talking because it is actually a manual car, so I don't want to have to try to juggle my cell phone. So I really, it is really cool. It is fun. And is that something as you design the products that you're trying to make it not turn and play kind of thing, but pretty close so the average, let's say gearhead can do it in their garage?
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things. My personally, and Greg, you and I talked about this, I consider myself a car enthusiast as well. And I think a lot of people in this industry, the car electronics or the aftermarket car stereo industry, we're car enthusiasts at heart as well. We took our love of music and our love of electronics and our love of cars and we kind of put it all together. So I think I wouldn't say we specifically design it specifically for the do-it-yourself or the shade tree mechanic, but just naturally because we all got into this industry from that tinkering side that they do kind of fall into that. And of course, some cars are easier or more complex than others. Your Porsche 996, that's a perfect example of one where it's still relatively just as you described. There you can still change things and you can still, change out the stereo and the speakers without having to reset the computer. But it really can be a great and rewarding experience. And, the cool thing about car stereo is we as an industry, we tend to make things in standardized sizes. So most of the aftermarket radios are going to be the same size, regardless of brand. The same holds true with a lot of the speakers. There's a variety of different speakers out there, but we're relatively uniform in the size, and that goes hand in hand with the car manufacturer as well. So it does lend itself to if you have the intention and the tools and kind of the spirit, you can absolutely wrench on your car and just as you said, upgrade the sound, upgrade the technology, upgrade, how personalized that car is.
Right. And there are a lot of different ways to personalize it. I was hopping around your website a little bit, and the link is in the description, pioneerelectronics.com. But some of the cool stuff, I didn't even think about upgrading, like driver assistance. Obviously GPS is probably pretty obvious, Apple CarPlay or Alexa, those kind of things are probably pretty high demand right now. Your CDs, your DVD players, your subwoofers are more traditional kind of stuff, but backup cameras, Bluetooth adapters. So it seems like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of customize your ride, so to speak, and make it much better for you from an enjoyment engagement perspective, right?
Absolutely. And, it's funny, your comment about, the trend of consumers wanting to upgrade their engine, put an LS motor in something or change out the suspension to be more modern and maybe handle better or ride better. We're following technology kind of in the same way of adding things like safety. So, many of us have a new car and then an old car that's kind of our fun or our toy. So that new car, even, some of the lower end cars have things like blind spot detection or, drive recording, a camera that records your drive in case an incident happens. Those are all things that now the aftermarket is coming around as well. So we have blind spot detection that you can add onto classic cars or more modern cars very simply or more complex as well. And we've got a range of dash cameras or drive recorders that we've just introduced as well that again are outside of that traditional, I'm going to make it sound better or louder or add convenience features, and now getting into that area of driver assistance and safety.
Right. Yeah, and I love your website, honestly, because when I was going on there, I wanted to explore, like, well, what's some other stuff that would go well with my little 911? And as I jump into the different buckets that I kind of just mentioned, whether it's the DVDs or the GPS or whatever, I'm like, I don't know how I would get this to figure out. And then I realized on your website you have a fit guide, which I thought was super cool. And you can actually do a drop down and pick out your make and model of car, and it really walks you through the process. So in the past, when I always thought about, like upgrading a stereo, I kind of got lost in the weeds, and even more so nowadays with the complexity and the variety of options that are out there. But it's really nice that you guys are kind of holding our hands as we walk through the process, right?
Absolutely. Well, and as you said, there's such a variety of options. That fit guide, that locator of what fits in your cars, we knew early on that was a necessity. Again, most of us coming from the industry as well. So, and we're really proud that our fit guide isn't just, a handful of newer cars either. You can go back pretty far into more of the classic and collector type of cars and find out what size speakers fit in your car, what radio would fit, and then it, just as you described, Greg, then it'll link out even to the specific product pages right on the website so you can learn more about what fits.
Well, what's fun is as we're talking, I said, all right, let me see what the oldest car I can get on here. And I just stumbled across, I saw the Amphicar, which I've been very familiar with those recently, from 1967. So I hope those are waterproof speakers, because that car is not that great of a car and not that great of a boat.
And it may be listed in the database, but it might tell you there's nothing you can put in.
No, it does. It does have speakers and everything we can put in there. So.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I just pulled up a 1957 DeSoto Adventure. So if you want to know not only what kind of speakers you need, but a link to get them, it's right here. So this is brilliant. I love this. It's fun just to kind of hunt around here and see what kind of crazy stuff you can get Pioneer speakers and audio equipment for on your website. So that's really handy that you've put that on there for my listeners to kind of hop around. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's really cool. Now you said before that you are a car enthusiast, so I do want to ask you, what kind of cars are you into, and how did it begin?
Wow, that's a big question. So let's see. Personally, it probably began. I was like many kids of the 70s and 60s and 80s, and so I had a large collection of Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars, and just loved cars from the beginning. And then my father had a 1979 Mazda RX-7. Which is what I learned to wrench on. So, we would, just as you mentioned, change out the plugs, change the distributor points and the condensers and change the oil and do all the maintenance on. And then it just kind of progressed from there. So, like you mentioned with your Porsche, I someday hope to have a Porsche. Right now I'm driving a BMW, but I'm driving the last of the BMW station wagons here in the United States. So the F31 at 2017.
Well, hang on to that, because I just reviewed some BMW market trends, and they are going nowhere but up. And especially with today's environment, I'm sure your cars are already gone up, and wagons are definitely on trend with the next generation of collector cars. So that's a very cool pick. I'm assuming that's because you might have some kids that have some soccer gear or such.
It is, but it was as much that as just as many of us, wanting something unique to drive. So I always loved wagons, and they're so rare, and especially that last year, just like you're talking about having your first of the water-cooled Porsches, it was a great find, and I don't plan to get rid of it anytime soon.
Right, yeah, yep. All right, well, is there anything else you wanted to kind of touch base on about Pioneer Electronics before I move on to a little game I like to play at the end here?
No, I just, you already mentioned the website, so that's great. We are also on Facebook and Instagram and great library of videos from one of our employees on YouTube. So you just search for us and you can get all sorts of educational resources about what fits into your car, as we've discussed, various options of technology that we have, and especially on the YouTube, how to even operate. It's a funny anecdote, but one of our, or actually still our highest ranked video, which continues to calculate or compile views every year, is how to set the clock on our products. And those views spike every time the time changes. We get another good spike in videos. So,
oh my gosh.
Definitely a lot of information out there, and we'd love to supply you and your listeners with all the great technology and accessory to upgrade their ride.
No, that's really, really awesome. I appreciate that. And I will put the link to your YouTube channel in the description as well, so folks know where to go when they have to update their clock and see the awesome other videos as well. So that's really great. 2 quick points based on what you just said. Based on your history of growing up and loving Hot Wheels, a quick call out. I will have Mike Zarnock, the world's largest Hot Wheel collector, on the podcast. Either it just aired or will air right after this episode. And then also on your website, I just happened to find Land Rovers. You have a lot of options for Land Rovers going back to the Defenders and such. And I just posted my market trends for Defenders. So I know I have a lot of rabid Land Rover Defender fans out there. So be sure to check out Pioneer Electronics to upgrade your Land Rover. So, all right, Ted, are you ready for this fun game? I did not give you a heads up on. It wasn't on purpose. It was accidental, but it's fun. Are you ready?
Okay, I am ready.
All right, it's a little game I call Keep, Cash, and Crush. So I get you 3 cars. I'll give you 3 cars, and you have to pick one to keep forever, one to cash in, and then one to, unfortunately, send to the crusher. Now, if you have a hard time sending a car to the crusher, you can list them in, number 1, number 2, and number 3, and then I'll take number 3 and throw it in the crusher for you, okay?
Got it.
All right, so I've picked 3 cars, and I don't know that you have audio entertainment options for all 3 of these. I suspect possibly not one of them, but I did pick 3 cars from 3 different generations. All right, so the first one is a 1931 Bentley 8-liter special. So I'm guessing that's not on the website, but I haven't actually checked. So that's a 1931 Bentley 8-liter special. So that's like a 2-door convertible roadster. It's pretty cool. The next one you'll be familiar with, a 1993 Jaguar XJ220 supercar. That came out in 1993. And then the third one is maybe not as familiar with, but it's a cool car, 1968 Iso Grifo. So that's European bodied, but it's basically a Corvette underneath. So those are your 3 cars, a 1993 Jaguar XJ120, 1968 Iso Grifo, and then a 1931 Bentley 8-liter special. So which one would you keep forever? Which one would you cash in? And then which one would you send to the crusher?
Okay. I would cash in the Bentley. I would, it would be a great one to keep, but I think the value would certainly go a long way to putting my kids through school and maybe even buying more cars.
There you go.
I would. Boy, that's a tough call. I think I would keep the Iso Grifo.
Wow.
And I would unfortunately crush the X220.
Okay. All right. So I respect those answers. All right. So the estimate on the Bentley, which is coming up in our Amelia Island sale, is $400,000 to $500,000. So that was a good call as far as one to cash. Let's see. To keep the ESO, are you familiar? It sounds like you're familiar with the ESO. Tell us about that.
I'm familiar with it, not detailed, but I am aware of what it is. Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they're super cool. I drove my first one a couple of weeks ago. All right, and then the Jaguar, You're crushing that one. What's your theory on that?
So being a hopefully Porsche wannabe someday, when those supercar wars were coming out in the late 80s and 90s and such, I was more of a 959 guy. And so didn't have a particular fond. Plus, I watched a lot of sports car racing back then, and so I just was never big on that Jag.
And I'm okay crushing that one. A couple of reasons why. It never lived up to expectations because it was supposed to be a V12. Turns out it came out as a 6. And then if Jaguars, the XJ 120, 140, 150, that always meant the top speed was 120 miles an hour, 140, 150. So the 220, you would say, is 220 miles an hour. Well, it fell short. It could only hit 217. So it's
There you
improperly
go.
advertised. So I support you on that. Crush.
Absolutely. Definitely crush it.
Well, thank you so much, Ted, for joining us on this call here. What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about Pioneer Electronics and ways to upgrade their ride?
Definitely visit us at www.pioneerelectronics.com.
Awesome, Ted. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and great fun. I absolute joy being on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Collector Car Podcast. Don't forget to give us a nice rating on iTunes and be sure to follow us on Instagram and everywhere else at the Collector Car Podcast.